Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at Venus's upcoming trine with Saturn. It's another aspect that's perfecting this week. We talked a little bit yesterday about Mercury's upcoming long-standing square with Neptune. This is a little bit shorter of a transit, and we're going to take a look at it today. Before I dive into that, as usual, you guys know I'm in the midst of promoting my upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. You can check it out on my website, nightlightastrology.com. Go to the courses page, click on the first year course. You can scroll down to read all about it. It's a great class for people who really are looking to deepen their relationship with astrology, to study ancient astrology in particular, which is very different from a lot of what people first encounter when they're studying astrology online. Most of what people are going to encounter is going to be psychological astrology and kind of what we broadly would call modern forms of astrology. Ancient astrology is going to give you a foundation in the spiritual philosophy, the metaphysics behind houses, signs, planets, aspects, dignities, chart delineation. It's more concretely predictive. It's more like learning a karmic science. But at the same time, in this program, we're working to incorporate that kind of psychological style of counseling astrology. So it's a kind of a fusion between styles and eras. At any rate, the course includes about 100 hours worth of lectures and 12 guest lecturers who come in. We have breakout study sessions led by my staff in between modules. We have an interactive group forum discussion that's going on all year long. You can email me throughout the course with questions at any time. There is also, all of the courses are recorded, so if you are not able to participate in the live webinars, you can watch them at your own pace. You have 2 years once you enroll within which to kind of digest the content. If you want to, there's a certification exam at the end that we give people. That's optional. A lot of people come into this program because basically developing an astrological practice is very similar to developing your own yoga practice. It's like having your own cosmic GPS program, on board and running with you at all times, which is amazingly helpful when you're trying to stay centered throughout the journey of your life. On the other hand, many people take the course because they are interested in learning to read for other people, because there's nothing like being able to sit down with someone who can take out that map with you and can explain the lay of the land and also help you to interact with or participate with the unfolding of these transits in your life. So that's, we support a lot of people with different intentions in terms of why they take the program. It starts on June 13th. It meets weekly on Sundays. And you can read all about all the details. There's a frequently asked questions section. You can email us anytime you want, info@nightlightastrology.com. And there's a couple different payment options. Save $500 off if you use the early bird payment that's available right now. There's a payment plan. There's also need-based tuition. So with that being said, let's take a look at today's astrology. All right, so I'm going to put the real-time clock up, and here's what we're looking at. You can see right now that Venus in the sign of Gemini, air sign, is moving into a trine with Saturn in the sign of Aquarius. Now, this is a nice trine for the two of them. Saturn's in the overcoming position, which means Saturn has the more dominant influence over Saturn and Venus in combination right now. You can always tell which one is superior by imagining that you're looking into the center of the chart from both planets. The aspectual ray connecting the two of them, which is coming off from Saturn's right-hand side. If you imagine Saturn as a person looking into the middle of the wheel, the aspect goes to Venus from Saturn's right. That would mean that Saturn is in the superior position, which means it has a more dominant influence within their dynamic. Now, that influence over Venus is what we're gonna break that down kind of piece by piece and give you a sense of what to expect. But generally speaking, because this is a trine and trines are of the nature of Jupiter, this is a very supportive dynamic right now. Saturn's in its own sign. Saturn has some triplicity rulership in the air signs. We also know that Saturn is in this very comfortable relationship with Venus because they're both in air signs. That's part of how we identify a trine. We know that trines are of the nature of Jupiter. That comes from the feeling that, or the idea that they're all a part of the same elemental family. And so Saturn is really presenting itself as a larger body of support right now for Venus. Okay, so the other thing to keep in mind is the timing. So you can see right now that the two planets are about 2 degrees away. Now, Venus moves pretty quickly, so this won't last forever, but let's take a look. So tomorrow, Venus will move into that 13th degree. This is May 19th. And by Thursday, May 20th, it will have passed over it. You give it about a 3-degree range in terms of its effect. It's passing over it between now and Saturday. And just after it passes over that trine, Saturn's also stationing and turning retrograde. And so there is something here. One of the things that I love about whenever Saturn turns retrograde is you have to remember that retrogrades often mean periods of delay or change or reversal or revision or revising something. One of the nice things about Saturn retrogrades is that in Saturn's direct motion, Saturn's often providing us with harder lessons, sometimes a feeling of constraint or limitation. When Saturn turns retrograde, it can actually be nice because sometimes what you're going to feel is that the load is being lightened, or you're getting a little bit of a reprieve or a rest period from some of the intensity of Saturn, or some of what Saturn's done that's been difficult will be undone. Or it's almost like when you get into an argument with someone and then you come to a resolution later. I sometimes think of Saturn retrograde periods as a period in which all the difficult and heavy stuff that's been happening is going to pull back, and some of the fruit of that difficult work will be acted upon and resolution will come about. So it's not always a bad thing when a malefic turns retrograde. At any rate, so that's happening right after Venus clears that 3-degree range by May 23rd, which is Sunday. So I really like this transit for the week ahead. Now, next week, Venus is going to start getting into the square with Neptune, entirely different conversation. For this week, all the way through Sunday of this week, May 23rd, I really like what Venus and Saturn are up to. All right, now let's talk about what you can get out of a Venus-Saturn combination. So let's kind of break it down piece by piece. Venus represents whatever is pleasant or desirable, whatever is harmonious or agreeable. You can think about Venus as taking, remember, sextiles are of the nature of Venus as well. You could think about Venus as taking unlike things and finding a way to bring them together. I'm reminded of this right now as we are two things that are going on in my life. One is unpacking, and in a new house, you're trying to find, you have all this stuff, and you're like, well, where is its place? And where its place is really depends on its relationship with other things that you have. You want the spirit of the place to feel coordinated and agreeable, harmonious. I'm not an interior, designer or decorator, but I think anyone who has done this before knows what I mean. It's like, well, here's my favorite thing, but does it go well in this room? Does it go well next to this other thing? So it's a very mundane example, but life is like that too, where there's lots of moving parts. And there's all sorts of modifications, fluctuations, permutations around us. And we are always consciously trying to arrange things around us in a way that makes us feel like it's all fitting together somehow. Whether it's the schedule that you're managing, your kid's schedule, the way you're going to do your food, the way you're going to coordinate your plans for the evening. I have this song that I sing around the house. I do this little jig, and I'm always singing modifications, modifications. We're making modifications to modifications. And I sing it. I can't believe I actually sang that song, but I jig around the house singing that song because with 2 kids and obviously, my wife who has Saturn in Virgo, we're always modifying stuff. There's always a modification happening to the plan. And it's like, okay, wait, we've got to do it this. We're going to do it this way. But no. Okay, well, this other factor. And then this is like this. I joke. I'm like, you can't get 20 yards out the door in the stroller for a walk without at least 3 or 4 modifications happening. What are the modifications? They could be anything. With the girls, it could be something as particular as the way a sock is feeling, and then something needs to be modified. So as you can imagine, anytime you have, you're dealing with modifications, you're trying to make them all fit together. Now you can imagine me jigging around my house. So, modifications though, we're always trying to fit things together and make them pleasant, agreeable, harmonious. And we're always adjusting them so that we can feel that we have something, that we're tasting something desirable, or that we're being satiated, even if it's just sort of mentally, in an atmosphere or in terms of what we're eating, or, whatever. So there's always like, Venus is always flying around trying to smooth things over and make all the correct modifications to make everyone feel good. Now, Saturn, on the other hand, Saturn is really the judge. It's a really good way of thinking about Saturn is in terms of its exaltation in Libra, for example. Saturn is the judge over whether or not something that has been modified achieved its intended or desired outcome or effect. Did this work? Didn't it work? Did it reach the ideal, or did it fall short of the ideal? This is partly to do with the fact that Saturn's natural rulership in Aquarius is also opposite the sun's natural home in Leo. And the sun really connected to this idea of the A-day, the ideal forms. In all of our lives, the sun and the sun's position in our chart has to do with the ideal or desired outcome or effect that we're hoping for. I want to be a priestess of tarot, or I want to live in a country environment that feels and looks like this. The image that we get in our head is very solar, in the sense that it already exists. It exists somehow eternally. It's not time bound, that image. And these are the archetypes. And there's so many of them. And it could be that one archetype is more of a temporal, fleeting ideal, how I want the evening to go, but it's also how we want our lives to go, or how we want a chapter of our lives to go, or how we want some area of our lives to go. And the natural opposition to Saturn has to do with whether or not we reach that or can reach it, because in this world, obviously, things are impermanent. And so everything eventually falls apart. What's that? I'm trying to remember, who was it? William Butler Yeats. The center cannot hold. You guys remember, what was that? What was that poem that he wrote? Slouching toward Bethlehem. I can't remember now. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Do you guys know which one I'm talking about? If you do, leave the name of it, because I'd love to remember that poem. But anyway, the center can't hold forever in the material world. That central idea falls apart. The sun, as a central principle in our solar system, will eventually burn out. So Saturn represents the fact that we're always missing the mark somehow. We're always failing or falling short, or things are always falling apart. There's always decay. And there's always this disappointment that we couldn't reach the ideal, or that it didn't last very long, or that when we got it, it was hard to maintain. And at the same time, Saturn is offering judgment as to how close we are to the mark, or how far we are from it, how far we've fallen from it. In that sense, Saturn is associated with contemplatives and mystics, because the contemplative or mystical lifestyle begins when we look at the world and we say, well, does it add up or not? Does this life I'm trying to live, are my ideals reachable? Are they even making me happy? There's a lot of people, and I notice this in myself too, and I talk to a lot of people, I see a lot of people on social media. There's a lot of people who live our lives with really high, lofty ideals and expectations for how we think society should be, how we think nature, what we think about nature and how it should be, what we think the world should look like, what we think our neighbors should act like, how we think ourselves, like, how should I be? And I don't know if we really enjoy our relationship with these ideals. So Saturn can also be that it's never good enough. It's kind of bitter, and reminds us of, it can be like a sort of cynical planet in that regard. On the other hand, if you don't have an awareness of the way in which this world, it can only offer reflections of ideals, then you'll never enter into the mystical, contemplative, the hermit. You'll never have the distance that Saturn requires to have real insight, to see beyond just the flickering shadows of the world. So Saturn's this very interesting planet. But when it pairs with Venus, it can tell us whether something has fallen short of the ideal in terms of beauty, aesthetics, agreement, harmony. Are the way that we how are we placing things together in our lives, or in a room, or however, and is it working? Has it fallen short? and it's wisdom to know the difference too. So it's and at the same time, it could be seen as a kind of aesthetic judgmentalism, a kind of judgy, like a judge at one of those reality TV shows where they, you know, they're like fashion judges or whatever they're called. There's a bunch of them now. So people, the designers come out and they show like, oh, this is what my models are wearing. This is the line that I made. They're all competing to be like, you know, the next big designer or something. The judges are like, you know, like, no. Or like Simon Cowell, you know, on America's Got Talent or whatever that's called, or it was American Idol, I remember. And then now I think it's called America's Got Talent. But they're like, they stand and applaud, or they say, you know, like that. So that's like Saturn when it comes to Venus. Now, Venus and Saturn are working together cooperatively right now, which is really nice. So you're getting that kind of Jupiterian, the feeling of support. That Saturn trining Jupiter can be the voice of an expert who's going to give guidance. For example, consulting with someone about the correct paint color, or getting a teacher to teach you how to draw, finding an art history teacher that you really love, finding someone who can help you. Okay, so the other thing that's happening in my house right now is slowly but sure, but you know, not in a trying to do it in a way that's not like judgy and encouraging an unhealthy level of like self-criticism, but we're teaching our kids how to match articles of clothing and colors together. And I just noticed this, that we were spending a lot of time with it as Venus is coming into this trine with Saturn. And my wife and I jokingly call it, you know, clownware, where it's like, yeah, you look like an explosion of clown. You might be going to like a clown festival today. But that's okay, because she's also developing the ability to make her own choices. And she, you know, it's like so you're trying to be supportive. And I'm sure parents out there who are listening to this can totally understand. Like, you look like a fool. You look like a crazy person. But you can't say that, right? Because it'll smash their feelings. And so you have to be like, interesting choice. Interesting choice of apparel you've chosen, my young girl. And then, and then my daughter's like, really? You love it? And I'm like, I love it. It looks so awesome. And then, you know, gradually, like here and there, trying to also teach like this color goes with this color. So, you know, it's like, it's this push and pull between creativity and like just letting them do their thing. And then also like teaching them a little bit about how to make harmony with colors and things like that. And which my daughter's really like legitimately interested in. She loves drawing and painting, and she wants to know about those kinds of things too. And sometimes she'll hear my wife and I talking about like, you know, like sometimes I'll ask my wife, does this match? And my wife will be like, yeah, that's fine. And then Gigi will be like, what's match? And then, you know, so it's something that's coming along like that. And Saturn and Venus can be about the appropriate amount of judgment, or the appropriate kind of judgments that's there to make better your modifications. It's there. Saturn, Venus can give you that sense of wise, discerning, critical judgment, but constructive, because it's a trine. So you kind of careful judgments about beauty, careful looking over a business agreement very carefully, looking over a style or an approach to doing something, and kind of revising it, reviewing it, putting on your judge spectacles. Evaluation of whether or not things are working together well or not, and then rearranging potentially so that they are. So can we get that negative critical view of Saturn here to do something constructive along with Venus to create agreement? Agreements rooted in superficiality versus those in authenticity. That could be part of what Saturn's bringing to the table right now. Careful planning of an ideal or enjoyable experience, maturity and beauty. Let's face it. I mean, even if I now as an adult am always matching, there are some days where internally I need to go to the clown show for the day. I just need to not be matching or mingling. I just need to be a crazy explosion of different factors internally. Maybe externally too. Maybe I should, you know, dress like my daughter. That would be pretty exciting. But the idea of like, am I fitting a mold? Am I fitting a form? Am I doing the thing that's expected of me, that's agreeable, that will gain like, nice job for the day, human, you know? Like, or, or am I like just taking the time to be creative and deviate from set expectations or forms or structures, as we like to say with Saturn, but still like being authentic, being in, having. So the other thing that's interesting about Saturn is that Saturn can represent that deviation from a norm deliberately or intentionally. I'm an outsider. I'm intentionally going to be doing something that is in direct opposition to the ideal. And so, Venus, Saturn together in a trine, it could work out to just, like what do they say? Wave your freak flag. Like, so, I mean, do you need to go to the clown show with me? Do we need to go? Maybe. Grace and patience. This is a nice one. Like if something, you're trying to reach agreement or you're making larger, slower modifications to situations, but you need to take it carefully and go one step at a time and be patient. Great one. Great transit for that. Friendships or connections socially with people outside of your norm or your ideal. That's good. It stretches us to hang out with clowns, or for other people to hang out with us and discover that we're a clown. And no offense to clowns out there, by the way. This is not a hate on clown intention that I had today. Agreeable departures. I like this one a lot, where Saturn will say, no, that doesn't work. That's not gonna do it. But in a trine with Venus, by realizing I have to say no to something, or that something won't work or isn't agreeable, I actually come to agreement. So less is more, or cutting something out creates something better. A creative use of negative space in a piece of art is a sign of mastery. So that idea of taking away something, eliminating something, separating something, saying no to something, elimination that leads to something more agreeable or more specifically enjoyable. Playfulness that comes with experience. It's funny how you get better and better. The more that you do something, the more repetitive it is. You practice it. Suddenly, your ability to do that thing more playfully and freely and loosely starts to arrive. You could see something like that happening as well. Almost like a playfulness that has come with repetition or time. And then, refinement of taste or desire. Saturn is great at helping us refine and understand our desires, our wishes, what makes us happy and what doesn't, and just refining them, making them more mature, like a fine wine. So that's what I've got for today. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking a lot all day about that modifications song, and I'll be singing it and thinking of you guys. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll be back again as the week goes on with more fun content to come. So stay tuned. Leave your comments in the chat box below and tell me what you think about Venus, Saturn. Do you have a harmonious trine between Venus and Saturn in your chart? How's that worked out for you? I'd love to hear some stories. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.